Welcome to Hard Talk with me, Zeinab Badawi. I'm in Washington, where my guest in this exclusive interview is President Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya, who's been holding talks here at the White House with Donald Trump about security, trade and investment. But how can President Kenyatta invite investors to Kenya when the country is so mired in corruption that pervades all walks of life and enriches the few at the expense of the many? President Kenyatta says fighting corruption is his priority. So why do questions remain about how effective his efforts are? President Uhuru Kenyatta, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you, Zeinab.
You've had your meeting with Donald Trump. This is a president who describes some African countries as S-hole nations. He's also upset the South Africans by referring to farm seizures and large-scale killings of white farmers. Is this really a man you can do business with?
Let me put it to you this way. I think that what we need to do is to basically create a better understanding of the situation. And I think I had an opportunity to really do that today. I wouldn't say he's a man who is not willing to listen. He did listen. And we exchanged on a wide variety of issues. And I think he has a much better understanding, I think, of Africa, of Kenya, after our session. And I think basically he's a person who wants to do deals. He wants to see how we can partner, and that's the way I would actually broach the issue. Okay, I wouldn't look at it from past issues. I'd look at it more from, well, I've got a better understanding now. Can we do business? And we're saying Africa is ready for business. Africa is open, and Africa is a continent with wide diversity, and we need to be able to put out the real and true picture of who Africa is today.
When you say he wants to do deals with you, America wants to do deals with Africa, we know that, of course, Africa-China trade relations is about 4 times worth what America trades with Africa. Mm-hmm. Is there a sense that you'd like to see that balance redressed?
Well, absolutely, because as I've always maintained, Africa is looking to do business with the world. And Africa is not the same African continent of just a few years ago. We don't even have to talk centuries, just a few years ago. There's been dramatic changes, Zeinab, across the African continent, where people are beginning to get a much better understanding of themselves, who they are, where they are, and where they want to be.
But you want to have...
We are looking to see how we can partner with countries across the globe. The United States, China, Europe, Great Britain, but an understanding that is not a patronizing a partnership, but one that is a win-win partnership, one that understands that Africa needs to move ahead, that African people seek prosperity, that Africa has come of age, and that looks not towards aid, but how to do mutually beneficial trade and investment negotiations that benefit both parties.
But it looks like a win-lose situation at times. I'll give you just one example from your own country. Mm-hmm. The Chinese have built the Nairobi to Mombasa railway. Absolutely. Completed last year. It cost $3.2 billion, according to the Danish International Institute for mm-hmm. Development Studies. That is 3 times the standard for the industry. So I put it to you that perhaps you need to say African countries need to better leverage their position with China and other investors.
And I think we're doing precisely that.
But you haven't been doing that.
One of the things that you've got to appreciate and understand is that we are talking about replacing an entire rail system that was built over 110 years ago. And as a result of the railway line that we have now established with China, that is now operational, that is now moving passengers who used to spend 16 hours on the road or rail because of traffic.
For it.
No, we didn't. No, we didn't. And even if you look at the costings and estimated the fact that we had to also, because these days you've got to do things differently. It was traversing across national parks. We had to take into account how do we ensure that we don't destabilize, because it could have been cheaper.
I'm using it as an example.
We needed to look at also the environmental aspects and ensure that the railway that we're building doesn't become an impediment to what Kenya is greatly known for.
I was using it as
the environmental aspects were very important, and we covered
that. Was just one example, because you are going to be attending the China-Africa Summit in Beijing in the coming days. And the point I'm making to you is, do you believe that Africa should better leverage its position with China and other investors like the United States, where you're here? Yes.
And this is the whole objective, that we are saying that Africa is not the Africa of yesteryears. We are a much more open society. We are a much more democratic society. All these issues, as you are asking me today, all the numbers, all the facts are all out there. And what we're saying is we want to get the best deals.
You want to make sure you get the best deal for the Africans. All right. Is that also going to be the nature of what you're going to be discussing with Theresa May, the British Prime Minister, when you meet her this week?
Absolutely.
What's your message to her?
We are saying that we are keen on investment. We're keen on investment to help us fill our infrastructure gap. We're keen on investment that will partner in accordance with what Kenya's social economic demands are for our development. We are keen in health. We're keen in housing. We are keen in terms of food security. We're keen on manufacturing to create jobs for our people. We're keen on leveraging, not just in terms of investment, but also on our location, on the investment that we've made in our young men and women who are ready to take on the world.
So when you meet Theresa May, the British Prime Minister, this week in Nairobi, do you feel that post-Brexit that there's a greater or lesser chance for Britain to assert itself on the African continent?
I think that's the wrong question. We're not looking for Britain to assert herself on the African continent.
Trade-wise, for instance, investment.
We're looking for Britain. We're looking for Western Europe. We're looking for Eastern Europe. We're looking for China. We're looking for America.
But Britain
to
specifically.
Look at the advantages that Kenya has to offer. Now, Britain, of course, has an edge, given our historical relationship in the past. Britain has an advantage of leveraging both her knowledge of Kenya and Africa, her understanding, the historical and cultural ties that exist, but also leveraging on the Commonwealth, of which Kenya is a member, to improve trade in and amongst member countries. So I
that
think
would be your message.
The message that we have is all we are interested in are win-win proposals that actually enable all of us to take advantage of the opportunities that exist to create mutually beneficial prosperity.
All right. One issue I wanted to raise with you is that it's the 20th anniversary of the August the 7th bomb blasts on the American embassies in Tanzania and Kenya. More than 220 people died, most of them Kenyans, 5,000 injured. But this is what Evanson Gitu from the Bomb Blast Victims Association in Kenya has appealed to the US government to pay restitution to the victims. He says the Kenyan victims' lives have been shattered due to a lack of medication, proper care and livelihood. Did you raise their plight, which is still ongoing 20 years since that happened, with President Trump?
Well, I didn't particularly mention that issue, but this is an issue that you know has affected the lives of many thousands. Terrorism has affected the lives of many thousands, not just in Kenya and across the world. And we sympathize with the victims of the bombings in the Nairobi embassy, just as much as we sympathize with the situation that happened in Westgate, in Lamu, and other areas. And we are keen to see how we can work, especially with the United States government, to see that these people are adequately compensated, right? And that we can't return what they lost. But I believe that we can, and we will continue to try and do more for families and for victims to ensure that we make their lives as easy as possible. And this is an agenda that we are constantly putting across, not only to the Americans, in the same manner that we are looking after the victims of other attacks that have happened in the past. We would like to see the same happening to this particular group.
All right. In Kenya, you've outlined your big four agenda items,
Yes.
which is housing, health, infrastructure, and food security.
Yes.
But a lot of people are concerned that you're not delivering on these objectives, largely because of the widespread, rampant corruption that exists in your country at your own admission. And people are very sceptical in Kenya that you're getting to the bottom of this. One poll, Ipsos, in August this year, said that only 21% of people in Kenya have confidence that you're tackling this.
As I've said severally, we have made it very clear that this is an animal that we intend to slay. This dragon, this beast called corruption, is an animal that we intend to slay. We have been working quietly over the last few years to strengthen our various agencies that are involved in this particular fight. We have tried to go through and to assess where the weaknesses are. We have worked in conjunction with various governments across the globe who have given us the necessary technical support, who have given us the necessary training that we require to bring cases to a conclusion. As a government, as an individual, I am committed to this fight. As you've seen over the last few months, as we've gotten these new re-strengthened, regenerated agencies working, cases are now being finalized a lot faster, being presented before court. And we are looking forward now to our courts to do their part, to ensure that people in Kenya and across the world realize that the age of impunity is over, to ensure that we are able to achieve our big four
How
agenda.
soon do you think you can meet your objectives in tackling corruption?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, and if you've been following media reports alone, the number of cases that are now before the courts of law in Kenya are very many. Many of them people who nobody ever expected would ever appear before a court of law. So what we are now looking forward to
No high-profile convictions, though. No high-profile
now,
convictions.
that's what I'm saying. What Kenyans are now looking forward to is our courts of law will also now do their part and expeditiously process those cases, right? And convict in the shortest time possible.
So we're going to hear about big
all
fish?
culprits.
We're going to hear about big fish?
You've already
guilty.
heard about them being presented before courts of law. And that is what I'm saying. What is remaining now is for our independent judiciary to do their work and bring justice for and on behalf of the people of the Republic
But you know,
of Kenya.
you've got 18 months really from now on until the next election campaigning sort of starts, and you can't run because you've had your 2 terms. So you haven't really got that long. When do you think we might really see results? 3 months' time, 6 months' time?
You are
9 months?
already seeing results, Zeinab. You're already seeing these people arraigned before court. And what we're saying is that we're ready to support our judiciary in whatever manner that they desire as an independent institution to ensure that these cases are prosecuted as quickly as possible. And justice is not only is seen to be done, because this is what Kenyans
Because we're
want to know.
talking about millions and millions of dollars, for example, from women's charities, from the National Youth Service, which is a government agency that's dedicated to trying to tackle youth employment. And you've got one particular recent scandal, which is over toxic sugar that's been imported into Kenya. And it's alleged that MPs have been taking bribes to stop a report in Parliament which aimed to stop the importation of toxic sugar. And one MP has said that this is Godfrey Osotsi says the institution of Parliament that is supposed to protect the public has turned against them. This is the kind of thing that's going on.
And this is what we're saying. We are going to tackle, and we have begun tackling, regardless of who you are, and as I said,
So even
regardless
MPs who might be taking bribes?
Even if you're my own family member, Zeinab, I have said and I've made it very clear that agencies are free. And you have seen already a number, even of members of parliament, yeah, who have been arrested by the EACC, which is our anti-corruption commission, on charges that they, right, have abused their office, or they've taken advantage of their office for personal gain.
All right,
and this is happening. These are things that are happening as we speak, Zeinab.
All right, you've said even members of your own family.
Absolutely.
I have to put it to you that in 2011, Mr. President, Forbes magazine said that the Kenyatta family are worth about $500 million and own a lot of land. And we know that figures, for example, tell us that 8,500 people of Kenya's 49 million citizens own 2/3 of the country's wealth. And your family is part of that 8,500. How does that sit with your fight against corruption?
As I have always stated, what we own, what we have, is open to the public. As a public servant, I am supposed to make my wealth known, and we declare every year. And I've always said, if there is an instance where somebody can say that what we have done or obtained has not been legitimate, say so. We are ready to face any court. Furthermore, I've gone a stage further and said that going forward, we are in the process now of putting in place measures where every public servant's assets must be declared publicly, so that people can question and ask what is legitimate and what's legitimate. And if you can't explain yourself, including myself, then I have a case to answer.
That's the lifestyle audit that you launched in June, so that everyone in government, all public servants, will be asked to explain the source of their wealth.
Including myself.
Including yourself, and all those who've plundered public coffers will be put to task to explain themselves. But I put it to you that one MP, Oscar Sudi, has said that he wants the lifestyle audit to include an inspection of the wealth acquired by your late father, Kenya's founding president, Jomo Kenyatta.
We can even go back to my grandfather, great-grandfather. No problem.
Because according to Kenya's Truth and Reconciliation Commission report in 2008, it said this, and I quote, Jomo Kenyatta himself appears to have benefited immensely from irregular allocations of land. By 1965, Kenyatta is reported to have used his position as president to buy numerous settler farms. So you have said
the key word
no sacred cows.
The key word there is buy.
But will you allow this lifestyle audit to investigate historic acquisitions of wealth?
Perfectly welcome. Perfectly
You're going
welcome.
to do that?
Perfectly welcome.
And you think that you will emerge?
Very confidently.
Very confidently from that?
Absolutely.
So no sacred cows?
None.
And have you declared all this? I mean, you've done your
We're waiting for the processes to be done. We have started with especially procurement officers, and we're going to go until we get to my level.
And is everything going to be made public?
Absolutely.
So we know that who has been put through this audit?
Absolutely.
And is it underpinned by legislation?
This is what we're hoping to work together with Parliament to establish, because already that is done. But what we're saying is that at least for the executive, we will insist that if you want to continue serving, you must make it public.
So it's not just window dressing?
No. This is something I'm committed to, and it's something I am determined to leave as my legacy in this country.
Is that what you want your legacy to be?
Yes.
The fight against corruption?
Fight against corruption and transparency, and to ensure that the nation's resources are used in the best interest of the people of the Republic.
And talking about your legacy, we see what's happening in neighbouring Uganda, where President Museveni has changed the constitution. Are there any circumstances in which you can foresee that you might stay on for another term or submit yourself to election for another term, because you have a 2-year term only?
We work on the basis of our constitution. My predecessors all have functioned on that basis, and I intend to follow suit.
No circumstances whatsoever, even if the people demanded it in a referendum or something like that?
There is no provision in our constitution for that. And we cannot, on the one side, say we're fighting impunity, and then you become, on the other hand, part and parcel of the same impunity, that you've committed yourself to fighting.
One other trend in Kenyan politics that many observers have said is a blight on democracy in your country is the fact that people tend to vote along ethnic groups. And we saw what has happened in the last two elections, in 2008 when there was a terrible violence, but also the contested election last year when the opposition leader Raila Odinga went through the mock inauguration ceremony in February, and then in March there was this famous handshake between the two of you. What did that handshake denote? Was it just between two men, or did it show that the two ethnic communities have come together?
The handshake had nothing to do with the ethnic communities, because I myself got support from more than my community.
The Kikuyu.
Raila Odinga got more votes also from more than his community. The handshake basically denoted that what we as leaders are saying is that irregardless of our ethnic background, irregardless of our political differences, we will never allow, and we don't want to allow, and we will work together to ensure that going forward, political differences will not result in ethnic animosity, religious animosity, and that we will go around the country and preach that ideas are going to override personal interest, that we are going to work together to fight the ills that face and challenge our society, such as corruption, because it doesn't make a difference. Whatever your party or political affiliation is, corruption works against the entire country, and it needs all of us to come together to fight that. When it comes to unity, we want people to understand that they can make political choices without fear of political ramifications because I decided to go one way or another.
Will you create a new government position for him? Is that possible?
Why should we create any new positions? There are no new positions in government. We work according to our constitution. But that doesn't mean we cannot partner in the development and in the unification of our people.
As well as obviously being president of Kenya, you're also a leader of a very important country in East Africa. And I put it to you that one issue that's in the news very much is the fate of the Ugandan opposition MP, Bobi Wine. And I'd like to know whether you have raised his plight with President Museveni. He's now been released on bail on charges of treason.
Kenya is not a country that seeks to really interfere with other people's or other countries'
Even
issues.
when he's been beaten up?
Let me finish. You should let me finish, Zeinab. Right? We are a country that encourage democratic processes, but we also understand every country has their own challenge. So what we would say is that what Kenya would love to see is where political competition is allowed without intimidation. And we preach that message, but we say that where there are differences, please, let us ensure that those differences don't result in violence. Exactly what I said about
which is what happened to Bobi Wine.
Raila Odinga.
Yep.
So in short, ours is to encourage democracy and a peaceful solution to whatever differences may exist. But Kenya does not interfere, just like we also are not keen on other people interfering in our own domestic issues. And what we encourage is internal resolution to internal problems.
But the Kenyan National Lawyers Association has said it wants to bring Bobi Wine's case to the East African court because he was beaten up in detention.
As you know, we allow our institutions and our organizations the freedom to push whatever agenda they have. And as to how they're going to pursue that, I would encourage you, Zeinab, to ask them, this is how we intend to prosecute this case.
President Uhuru Kenyatta, thank you very much indeed for coming on Hard Talk.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you very much indeed.